In this Elden Ring video, I'm going to be showing you my Deathblade build. This is a 100 version of the Sword Sage build, so if you're wondering how the Sword of Night and Flame performs now after patch 1.03, and how to progress your build if you're using that weapon, then watch on to find out. First of all, let me just say that the Sword of Night and Flame is still very, very strong, and it remains one of the best weapons in the game, and if you liked playing with this weapon before, you'll still like playing with it, so there's no need to worry there. And one of the things I want to mention about this weapon is that everyone talks about the weapon arts and how good they are and how strong they are that come with the weapon, but the attack reading on this weapon is stupid. At +8 unbuffed, I'm sitting at 658 attack rating. That's absurd. And fully buffed, I can get over 1,000 damage at +8. That is like colossal weapon territory, and you're wielding a straight sword. So you have the attack speed of a straight sword, but you're dealing colossal weapon damage. That's absolutely insane. And no one seems to be talking about that. It's actually so good that if you got a second one, if you went online and got a friend to drop you one or something like that, or just got one from, a Discord, someone to drop one for you, and you dual wield these things and you do jump attacks, you can do over 2,000 damage easily with a jump attack setup with straight swords per swing. This is just crazy because then when you land, you can swing again really, really quickly, doing over another, 1,000, 1,500 damage in a swing. And that puts you in 3,000-4,000 damage in a matter of seconds, which is up there with some of the, best weapons in the game in terms of actual pound for pound damage per swing and some of the strongest spells in the game. Talking a bit how I play with this build, I lean into the Night Comet ability with this weapon. So I don't really use the flame one. I find the cast is too long. There are situations where it's very good, where you can creep up on a pack of enemies and just take them out in one swing, and I definitely use it in those situations. But I'm leaning into the magic damage ability of this weapon, so I've focused on how to increase the damage of that the most, and I think that's the weapon ability that most people will be using. So the Night Comet weapon skill scales with intelligence, meaning every point of intelligence you put into it increases the damage of it, and faith increases the fire attack. So they don't cross over though, so if you increase faith, you're not going to get any more damage on Night Comet and vice versa. This is one of the reasons that my stat spread is skewed heavily to the intelligence side versus the faith side, because you need 24 faith and 24 intelligence to use this weapon, but basically from that point forward, I've just increased intelligence in order to increase Night Comet's damage. That's not the only reason. Ancient Deathranker, for instance, costs a lot more intelligence than faith, but that is one of the reasons. Besides the Sword of Night and Flame, I'm also using the Prince of Death staff here because it scales with both intelligence and faith, and it also boosts the damage of death sorceries, which Ancient Deathranker is. Ancient Deathranker doesn't do a ton of damage anyway, so getting a little bit extra damage on it is good. We don't really use that spell for the damage, we use it more for the stagger and for setting up Night Comet with the sword, but getting that a little extra bit of damage helps as well. I do want to mention, though, that the Prince of Death staff is probably not the best staff for this point in the game because you can get higher sorcery scaling with others right now, but as you invest more points in faith and intelligence, it will eventually outperform them, so this staff's going to be your staff at endgame. So it sort of makes sense to just keep increasing it now because you'll want to have it upgraded when you get there. Besides that, I also have the Golden Order Seal. This is the sacred seal that scales off both intelligence and faith, so that performs very well in this build, and it allows you to use incantations effectively as well. So you kind of get a double whammy with this build. You can use sorceries very well, and you can use incantations well, which is one of the benefits of this build. I don't use a ton of incantations. Really, the only one that I use that benefits from this is Black Flame. But if there are other incantations you like Lightning Spear or something like that, you can also add them to this build. Talking about the armor for this build, there are really a couple ways you can go here. First of all, getting a headpiece that increases your intelligence is just good in general. That's going to increase your spell's damage. It's also going to increase your Night Comet damage with your sword. So this is not a bad choice. I like the Imp Head Cat for this because you need some protection with this build. It's kind of heavier, it has a little bit more protection, and it doesn't have any negative effects. So it's just really good all around. Another option is Olivinus Glintstone Crown in order to get even more intelligence. However, this has the negative side effect of reducing your HP by a bit, so I don't necessarily recommend it. Additionally, you can use the Spellblade's Pointed Hat to increase your Glintstone sorcery skill damage, which Night Comet is. This is from the set that drops from Roger in his quest line. In fact, every piece in this armor set will increase your Glintstone sorcery skill damage by about 2% or so. So if you wore the full set of this, you're going to get even more damage with Night Comet. However, it's very, very light, so you'll have very, very little protection if you do that. So I don't recommend it. However, if you want to get absolutely every little bit of damage out of Night Comet, this is definitely the set you would use. Additionally, I also like to use the Raptor's Black Feathers for this build because it boosts your jump attack damage by about 10%. And if you're dual wielding Swords of Night and Flame and you're having like attack rating of like 900 or 1000 or something, that when you do a jump attack, you're going to boost that by a further 10%. Though that's a lot of damage, and it's a little bit heavier giving you, than the Spellblade set. So it gives you a little bit more protection, which you'll desperately need with this build. And for my gloves, I use the Spellblade's gloves there, increasing my Night Comet by a little bit. And then I go with just heavy legs for a little bit extra protection. For my talismans, I use the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman +1, Godfrey Icon, Magic Scorpion Charm, and Fire Scorpion Charm. Fire Scorpion Charm and Magic Scorpion Charm increase your magic damage and your fire damage by about 10% each, but they reduce the amount of resistance that you have to damage. So that's why we have the Dragon Crest Talisman +1 to sort of make up for that. You'll obviously want to swap that out for a better version of that when you can get one, but I don't think you'll be able to get one too much, earlier in the game than this. Night Comet is completely magic damage, so the Magic Scorpion Charm is going to boost that, and it's also going to boost the damage with your regular attacks because you do some magic attack with that as well, and the Fire Scorpion Charm will boost your flame attack if you use that, and also your regular attack since you do some fire damage as well. And it will also boost your spells, so if you're doing, Ancient Death Rancor, or Magic Glint Blade, that's, magic damage, or if you're using Black Flame, that's fire damage, so it will boost those as well. Godfrey Icon is there because it increases the damage with charged spells and charged skills. Although Night Comet and the Flame Attack do not benefit from this, pretty much every spell I have in this build is chargeable, and it'll increase the damage of these spells by about 10% when you charge them, so you should be charging them when you cast them if you can. There are other talismans you can use as well. For instance, the Ritual Sword Talisman increases your damage by about 10% from all sources while your HP is full. This is really, really good because you use weapon skills, you use regular attacks, you use spells with this build. However, it's definitely difficult to maintain that unless you slot something like, Blessing's Boon that gives you a heal over time, or you're topping off with health potions regularly. So if you're playing predominantly ranged and you're a little bit more of a cautious player, this is not a bad pickup, but I tend to play a bit more aggressively. So if you're like an aggressive player, I wouldn't recommend this one. Also, if you did get another Sword of Night and Flame from someone and you are dual wielding regularly, the Winged Sword Insignia is not a bad option either. This will boost your attack power all the way up to like 22% at max when you hit over and over with L1. So this is really good. As I mentioned, you already have crazy attack power with this sword. Getting another 20% or so would be insane. So that's not a bad choice if you're dual wielding them. You can also use talismans like Graven School Talisman, which just increases your sorcery damage, or you can take things like Stargazer Heirloom that just increases your intelligence, which will boost your damage with your weapon. It'll boost Night Comet, and it'll boost your sorceries as well, and your incantations, because your scaling on the Golden Order seal also benefits from intelligence. So those are not bad options either. There are so many talismans that benefit this build that I think it really depends on the playstyle that you're going for. If you're more of an aggressive melee type player, then there are definitely ones that'll benefit you, but if you're more of a range type player, then there are other ones. So you should definitely just play around with these a little bit, or maybe you don't have them all yet, so you can use the ones that you do have until you find other ones you like more. So the spells I use for this build are Golden Vow, Terra Magica, Loretta's Great Bow, Magic Glint Blade, Black Flame, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Ancient Death Rancor. If you don't know what Golden Vow does by now, you probably haven't been watching my videos, but it increases your overall damage by 15%, as well as increases your resistances, and those are lowered a bit by the double Magic Scorpion and Fire Scorpion charms, so you need all the resistance you can get, but also the damage as well. And that's a buff you want to keep up regularly as you're fighting around the landscape and in boss fights. Terra Magica is a new addition, and it's not one we've used in any other build yet, and it will probably be present in the next iteration of the Sorcerer build. But what this does is it puts like a rune on the ground that has a little bit of a radius, and it boosts your magic damage, any form of magic damage, while you're standing inside of it for 30 seconds. So that means if you use Night Comet while you're standing inside it, it's going to be boosted by 35%. Or if you cast Ancient Death Rancor, or Magic Glint Blade, or Loretta's Great Bow, all those deal magic damage, so all those are going to be boosted as well. It's not something you'll use all the time, but it's great if you're like in a co-op scenario and you can hang back and range things down, or the boss doesn't have aggro on you, or you can cast it right outside a boss fog and then walk through and just stand in it and begin ranging from there. Loretta's Great Bow is there to give you a very long-distance ranged attack. It benefits from Terra Magica, and it also benefits from Godfrey Icon because it's chargeable, so that's a really good synergy. Magic Glint Blade is there to give you like a staple ranged option, and it's also chargeable, meaning it'll benefit from Godfrey Icon, and it also can give you a nice delay too. So like if you charge in with double swords or one sword, and you have these Glint Blades flying into the enemy while you're attacking, it can work really, really well. Black Flame is there to give you a fire ranged option for when magic is just not cutting it. It does incredible damage, and it does set a little bit of a dot there based on the max HP of an enemy, which is good for co-oping and for bosses with lots of health. And it also benefits from the Fire Scorpion Charm, and it also benefits from Flame Grant Me Strength, and it's just really, really good overall, and you can charge it, so it benefits from Godfrey Icon. Flame Grant Me Strength gives you 20% physical damage and 20% fire damage for 30 seconds. This is good because the sword deals fire damage and physical, so you're going to increase your overall attack power when you have this up. And also if you're flinging Black Flame, it's good because it'll benefit that as well. You don't tend to use it very often, but you will, just stack it before a boss fight real quick to give you like 20 or 25 seconds of good damage before it wears off. And lastly, we have Ancient Death Rancor. This spell deals okay damage at this point in the game. It's definitely not mana efficient, so you're not going to use it constantly, but it really shines in fights where enemies have like a head you can lock onto because the stagger damage that it deals is incredible. Like if you're fighting a dragon, or you're fighting some sort of enemy that has a head, or an enemy that moves around, is extremely mobile and hopping all over the place. The tracking on it is really good, and the movement is very slow, so it doesn't fly by the target and miss. It also tends to stagger enemies, as I mentioned in my previous video, and it gives you an opening for Night Comet. You can throw it up, and while the enemy is getting staggered over and over by each skull, you can use your Night Comet safely without getting hit. Hopefully that kills the enemy, but if not, you can just throw out another Ancient Death Rancor, and then repeat with Night Comet. And again, just like our other spells, it can be charged as well, so it benefits from Godfrey Icon. What I really like about this build is it has a lot of tools. It's got ranged attack, it's got different damage types, it's got melee attack, it has buffs, like it has just about everything. You can add Blessing's Boon to it to have a heal over time, or get a little bit higher faith and add, Blessing of the Erd Tree or whatever to get an even better heal over time. It has so many different options of things it can do, and that should help you overcome any obstacle in your path. One thing I also want to mention is that this build benefits greatly from using Godrick's Great Rune and popping a Rune Art, because it boosts all your attributes by 5, and you need almost every attribute for this build. You gain damage from your spells and weapons with Faith and Intelligence. You get Mind from that as well, which gives you more FP. Your weapons scale with Strength and Dexterity as well. And you also gain more health and equip load. So it's really good to use for this build. If you're not using it, I suggest using that one. And also something to note is that if you co-op, like if you put your sign down and get summoned or summoned from the summoning pool, this remains active while you're summoned. And if you die in that fight, it still remains active when you go back to your world. So if you plan on like putting your sign down and helping people with a certain boss for a while, make sure you pop one of these to further boost your stats. And lastly, one more thing before I wrap up this video, you can put your Magic Shroud and Crack tier and Flame Shroud and Crack tier into your Flask of Wondrous Physique to boost both of those damage types for 3 minutes. This is really great in a boss fight because you do both of these damage types with your weapon, and it allows you to use Black Flame effectively, it allows you to use any of your magic spells effectively, and either of your Flame Arts effectively while you're in that fight for 3 minutes, which is a very long duration. Most boss fights don't last that long if your build is set up correctly, so that's really, really good. Stay tuned for more build guides. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do next. I see a lot of people clamoring for the Colossal Knight, so we might go that route, but I haven't entirely decided yet. We still have a lot more build guides to go. I'm probably going to be on 100 builds for another week or so before we move to 150 level builds.